Okay, so I've just finished routing the headstock. So the way I do that, the template that's on there, there's a bearing on the router bit that just follows along that, and it gives us a nice smooth surface. That was why I spent time to get the template nice and smooth, because it's much easier to smooth that out than it is for the thick headstock. So just pulling off this template. So you can see there the tape still just remains. It's very easy just to pull that off, as opposed to double-sided tape where you end up with a big mess. So just get that off. Okay, so there's our headstock, ready to shape. Looks pretty good. Obviously you can still see the holes where the tuners were previously. I'm going to put a veneer over the top of that just out of mahogany, which will just give us a nice smooth surface. The back of it, probably won't worry about putting a veneer onto there. When I do the tobacco burst, I'll do a dark sort of a finish on the back there, so it'll hide that. I'll just probably make it pretty much almost completely black. And then we'll see whether we do a burst on the front here or not. I'll have to just check with the customer as to what they want. The next step also is to have a look at the neck joint. So what have I done with the body? Okay, so I've already given this a bit of a sand just within the body, the neck joint there, just to give me enough to be able to get the neck in. So it's sitting in like that. The shape of these has a taper, so the more you pull the neck down, the tighter it's going to be in the hole. And basically what I want to do is I want to get it so I've got the right scale length from my nut to where the bridge is. As I said previously, that's 24 3/4. So what I'm going to be basically doing is just sanding in the body side of this, not the neck side, the body side, and just till I can sort of slowly push that back. And once I've got the scale length right, then I'll be happy with where that sits. The other thing with the pickups that we're going to be using, they're intended to go on an arch top guitar, which would have a bridge that sits up a lot higher. So you get a neck angle. It's a bit exaggerated there because it's not in right, but you get a neck angle which comes up to your bridge. If you have a bridge that's sitting on a base, then it's going to lift that up higher, which means you'd have a bigger neck angle, and your neck would usually sit up a little bit higher as well. And so the pickups that I've got are intended to go with that, which obviously isn't going to work for a sort of standard bridge and this angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually route into the body so that we sink the pickups down, and I think it'll also look pretty cool because we'll have like a flush kind of like finish there, which will look awesome. The only thing that's a bit questionable is the neck tenon. So you got the tenon here, which is obviously providing a lot of the glue surface. I've already worked out that I don't need to actually cut that all the way. I will need to route into it a little bit, but it's still going to leave me with probably about 10 to 15 millimeters of thickness there, which will be fine. I've got a nice tight fit on the sides as well, and the rest of the bottom of it is going to sit quite nicely and have a good glue surface. So I'm not too worried about it. I guess it is a little risk, but I'm pretty happy that there's nothing going to go wrong there. I'm not going to route the full depth with the pickups that I'm using. They've got these screws and spring-loaded pole pieces. I'm going to chop off the excess screw length there, which isn't needed, and I'm just going to route for the width of that into that tenon. So I won't actually be cutting through the tenon or taking out a large area. It'll just be a channel in there for those to sit in, and I think that's going to work okay. I've also discovered that this template that I've got here, which was for a P90, I've just filed it a little bit bigger, and it gives us, it'll give us the template to be able to route to get a flush finish for these. So as you can see, they're just going to sit into the body like that. It'll look cool. I think once it's painted up, it's going to look really cool. So we'll get stuck into it now. Getting pretty close actually to getting the neck glued on. Just a bit of fiddly stuff with this routing, and then then we'll be ready to do that.
Everywhere I go, I will always be a Kingstown rocker. From the Gulf line to the coast, and even in some foreign lands. Well, I know I ain't no tough guy. I'm all alone, the electrical shocker. The thing won't seem so weird in the morning. It's such life, and who could do better than this? Working so hard to be a Kingstown rocker that nothing else exists. And if we have a little problem, let's get together and work it over, and things won't seem so weird in the morning. Everybody knows, they seem to think he had it coming. He was headed too close, and he was headed for a fall. Everybody knows, they seem to think he wasn't coming home. Everybody knows, they seem to think he had it coming. He was headed too close, and he was headed for a fall. Everybody knows, they seem to think he wasn't coming home. And it made his lifetime shorter. There's a master plan. I say to you, you're full of shit. What's all this crap about a route for the righteous? I'm begging you, point to it. I can never reach out and go that way anymore. I don't need recovering. Some sort of moral compass, but the sun still rises from the east. Follow the way and you will be set free, where we all will be released. I can never reach out and go that way anymore. I don't need recovering. Well, I can never reach out and go that way anymore. I don't need recovering. I find the way I am. Don't need recovering. I like the way I am. Don't need recovering. You know I find the way I am.
So, just in here I've added a bit of veneer. I was a bit concerned about how thick the area is for the controls to mount onto, and so I just had these visions of somebody accidentally ripping the cord out, ripping the lead out, pulling a hole into the top of the guitar, or just pushing too hard on a knob or something and just breaking it. So what I've done is I just made up a thin veneer of about 2mm, and I've just glued that in there. Yes, the glue's still drying, but just taking the clamps off, it'll hold. I've also noticed that when they've made this body,
Originally I thought that the glue line was just off center, but what I've discovered is that the glue line is actually the center of the body shape, and then the routing and holes that have been drilled off center. So the center line is actually this pencil line here that I've drawn, and you can see that runs off on a slight angle. And what that means is the body's lopsided around here because it's sitting on a different angle to the way the neck's running. So what I'm going to do is I've traced a template just off this half of it and then flip that over so that I get a symmetrical shape of the body. So I'm just going to cut out, I've marked it on here, I'm just going to cut around there and then smooth that off, and it'll just make it look a bit more symmetrical, because it just didn't look right and I wasn't happy with that. So that's where we're at, and then after that we'll be ready to glue the neck on.
I was standing right there at the gates of the west when the blood came pouring out. The hope was swirled, was spinning in my head, and it all just spilled about. Pick up the pieces, don't cry. Feed on your fears. Don't believe the lies. Springtime is lost. Coming home to you is enough. Stagger and fall.
Okay, now it's time to glue the neck on. In order to do that, we need to work out exactly where it's going to have to go to allow us the right scale length for the guitar. So as I said before, the scale length on these is 24 3/4 inch or 628 millimeters. There's a useful tool on the StewMac website, which you can find by just Googling StewMac fret calculator, and that will tell you where the bridge pins are supposed to mount for whichever scale length that you put in there. The reason that's helpful is that whilst your scale length is that 24 3/4, that's not exactly where your bridge is going to sit, because you've got to allow for the intonation that needs to occur in the amount of travel. So what it actually tells you on there is that for this scale length, you actually want your treble side bridge pin to sit at 629 millimeters. So I've just got this to give me a straight line, and I'm just going to put that here so that I can just find exactly where that falls, which is about there. So I now know that I want to get 629 millimeters from my nut to this line. I've got my neck already sitting in roughly where it needs to go, and I'm just going to put this ruler on here. So I can see right now that's on 631. So we want to have it at 629. So it's actually out a little bit too far. So I'm just going to wiggle that back a little bit. Push it in. Okay, so now 628. Probably going too far. So it's just a case of basically working out where it is that it's got to sit. I think that's going to be right. I'm just going to throw this on here. Get rid of my parallax error. And yeah, so that's where it's got to go right there. What I'm now going to do is take a ruler, put that up against there, and I'm just going to draw a line. So I know that when I glue this, that I want to have the end of my fretboard lining up with that line.
Now, we don't just want to have the length right, we also want to make sure it's straight. So what I've done here is I've just taken the bridge and I've tied some string, the tailpiece, and I've tied some string to it. And I'm just going to sit that in there. And then I'll just take these up to the tuners. So this is going to give us the alignment of the neck and the bridge, so we can make sure that we've got a nice straight line. If I can get them in. We might just cheat a bit, we might just hold them. Okay. So if I just put these onto the edges of the fretboard where they are meant to go, and then I can look at this and I can see where we're actually sitting in terms of the alignment. I can see that it just needs a slight twist. Yep. So about there. Okay, so I'm pretty happy that alignment's going to work. Basically now I'm ready to glue and clamp the neck on. As you can see, there's a nice tight fit on here. Okay. So again, just taking out tight bond. You can use other glues. It's not the only option, but tight bond's pretty easy to get. What I wouldn't do is just walk into a hardware store and buy PVA glue. It's not recommended for these sorts of applications. The thing you need to, I guess, be careful about is that when guitars get hot and what have you, there's a risk that the glue could soften. But tight bond is certainly well used. I believe people actually sell a small amount. They sell tight bond in small packages. That's enough to complete a guitar. So I definitely would recommend that you purchase one of those just to make sure you're using the good stuff. I want to get lots of glue in there. And at the sides. Looks a bit messy, but we do not want this to come undone, that's for sure. Alright, I'll pop that in. Now it'll go in a lot easier now that the glue will give it a bit of lubrication. Or not. So pushing that out to the line that we've just drawn. That glue has really made that joint tight. It's one of the things with tight bond that you can get, and especially if you're gluing on fretboards and things, that the moisture in it can actually cause the wood to expand a little bit. Still not quite there. Yep. Finally. Perfect. And one more time, just move that a bit. Check the scale. Yep. 629. Alright, we are good. So now I'm going to throw a clamp on that, clean up all the excess glue, but I'll try and get some of it from out. Just try and get some of it from inside. I don't know how I'm going to go. Even though this stuff isn't really seen, it's just something I always like to try and get a little bit neater.
me try this trick. Really important when building one of these is to resist the temptation just to want to slap it all together. It really does make a big difference to take the time to get everything lined up properly, keep everything clean. It's a much more rewarding outcome. With this one, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to end up with a really good guitar as a finished product. Bit of a mess there to clean up. Actually, it's quite a large heel. Usually when I make guitars, I make that heel a lot smaller just to give a bit more access up to the top frets. Once this glue is dried, it can become very difficult to get the little joint in the neck there cleaned up, so I like to really just get rid of as much of it as possible. When you've got the grain going in all different directions of that joint, it's really hard to sand it and get a smooth finish. End up with scratches on the grain. Alright, now I'm going to clamp that. So we're going to need a block. One thing I've got here is just a radiusing block, which I'm going to use to help with the clamping coil. Very handy to have an assortment of clamp sizes. Alright. So now to try and clean out that glue that's squeezed out there. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with how that's gone together. We've got a nice clean tight joint. You saw how hard it was for me just to try and realign it, and I was actually trying very hard not to make too many grunting noises on the camera. Alright, so I'm going to let that dry now, and then all the woodworking is finished. All I have to do is to re-drill the holes for the controls.
through the veneer that I've installed. And then we're ready to progress with the finishing process. So there'll be a grain filling to do. I'm actually going to use a darker coloured, probably walnut, or even add some black stain to it to have it so there's a darker filler in the grain, and that'll bring out the grain, make it look a lot better when we spray our finish on it. Alright, so far we're looking pretty good.